Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the final episode of this series of Pilgrims on the Digital Way. This is episode 10. We also did an intro and a bonus, so technically 12, but this is the last one in this series. That's not to say there won't be more series if people want them, but for now, we're going to be taking a break. Who are we? Well, as always, my name is Matt Boynton, and with me is...
Hi, I'm Mary Michelle. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you, Matt.
Yeah, and nice to see you as always, Mary Michelle.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're taking a bit of a break, aren't we? Because, well, it's the summer and people go away and
Well,
things
and
get
Matt is the one
disrupted.
going traveling.
Yeah, I'm off tomorrow. I'm off to Bulgaria. Not a pilgrimage, but I do hope to be visiting lots of monasteries.
Wow, that's going to be spectacular. I'm excited for the videos you're going to
Yeah,
film,
well,
Matt.
they'll be on this channel. Yeah, I'm going to be because I used to live in Bulgaria. It's a place that's very special for me, and it has amazing
Really?
monasteries. But I never saw them because I didn't have a car when I lived there, so they're all a bit
Okay,
out of the way, as monasteries tend to be. But
sure.
I'll also
Well,
be visiting a couple of Sufi shrines as well, and one of them I've been before called Demir Baba. It's an absolutely incredible place, so
wow,
spiritual, and for anybody that's ever in that part of the world, I cannot recommend it enough. But you
wow.
probably need a car to get there.
Okay, well, I haven't been to Bulgaria, Matt, but I did go to Hungary when I
Hmm.
was very young on a school trip. And I was in a convent at the time as a boarder. So naturally, the nuns took us to a series of monasteries in Hungary. And I was only 12 at the time, and I never forgot it. I've never seen anything like it in my life. The libraries, it's the
Hmm.
libraries that are so spectacular. The architecture and the decor, of course, and then the sheer volume of volumes
Yeah,
it's just it's absolutely mind-boggling. So similar part of the world, get to the monasteries.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Right. So, I mean, this normally we
And
have a
here we go.
question, don't we? We normally have a question, but
Normally, yes.
today we don't because it's our final one, and we're going to have a bit of a summing up. What I did do is thought I would have a look about comments on the last video,
Yeah,
and we do have one, and
great.
it's from our friend Lindsay Shoot,
Our friend
who...
Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay.
Yeah, and so I'll read it out. I love Lindsay's stuff.
Me too.
Lindsay is on Community Arc, which is a page that actually a friend of mine. I may have mentioned her before. She used to work for the Diocese of Lichfield, and she helped look after the shrine at Ilam. That's my favourite shrine, and she now works for the Diocese of Hereford, lives in Wales, and she's on this Community Art page. And Lindsay's one of the people that goes on there, and it's kind of almost
Okay.
like a church community for people without a church. That's what it
Wow, that
to
sounds
be.
amazing.
And my friend Lizzie had started sharing our stuff on there, and it had a bit of interest. So anyway, Lindsay has said, just to clarify, I am a she. Well, we thought you were, but you can never be sure.
Okay.
Lindsay can be a man's name, especially in Bonnie, Scotland. Good point about the journaling and being tired whilst on pilgrimage. Not sure how you would combat this. Maybe just record a few key words from the day before bed each day. Mary Michelle, I think I feel like you. I would like as much time as I needed to walk so I could reflect more, but I would have to finish it as that's my personality. I'm a completer and a finisher. So am I, Lindsay. I used to be a train spotter when I was a
I'm
kid.
not. I'm a wanderer.
Yeah. So I'm in pain most days in whatever task I'm doing, and think that suffering is a part of life. So it's definitely a part of pilgrimage. That Jesus is with us in our suffering and understands, which keeps me going. But I am sorry to hear you're in suffering. I
Yeah.
wouldn't wish that on anyone. Um, I think that time away from your regular day to day can change your life if you let it. For example, I went on an away weekend with church communities, and it was lovely to be around people who love Jesus and each other. Plus, I wasn't having to cook, walk the dog, clean, etc., all surrounded by Jesus and love. So when I got home the next day, I woke up feeling quite deflated and sad, and that was only having 2 days away. But the point is, it made me think I'm not surrounding myself with the right people or actually any people. I'm not having enough human interaction or the right human interaction. So I need to change that. So in that, yes, pilgrimages can really change your life if you let them, and take action when you get home. Again, sorry for the long ramblings, nothing to apologize for, but I
No,
love
it's
your guys'
great.
videos. See you next time. God bless, Lindsay. Well, Lindsay, your comments always make my day, and there's so much in that one. Mary Michelle, anything you want to say about that?
Well, what I would say, what jumps out is because it's one of our themes and something that you talked about quite a bit, and last week for sure, Matt, about the camaraderie. Because
Yeah.
when we talked about what's missing when the Camino's over,
Mm-hmm.
well, what's missing obviously is your traveling companions, whether they're people that you went with in the first place or people that you met up with. You mentioned, Matt, meeting
Mm-hmm.
people that you just get in a good groove with and you want to stick with them for part of the way. And so
Yeah.
there's a camaraderie that I think people miss after the
Mm-hmm.
fact. And I think that's what Lindsay is referring to, when we get back to our lives, except for some of us that can be a bit lonesome.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're in pain and you're at home, that it is harder to meet people. But conversely, things like the internet and that do open up opportunities, like the fact that we're talking now. We would never have met otherwise,
Right.
you
Well,
know, in
and
the pre-internet
Matt,
age.
there's a virtual Camino as well.
Yeah.
There's a Camino that you can join. I forget the company. I might even be a couple. There's at least one company that I will get the link to, Matt, for the
Mhm.
description. It might be something for Lindsay and others to consider. Is that you essentially you walk locally, but you transfer what you're doing to the milestones of the virtual
Mhm.
Camino. I was looking at it the other day. I'll post the link so we can see
Yeah.
if
I
anybody's
mean,
interested in
that's
that.
kind of hard if you're in pain, but even if you did like a mile, and then over
Sure.
several years you can clock it off or something, and it would be a great sense of achievement. I've seen, I mean, this is something I kind of wanted to do an episode on if we had a second series.
Yeah.
It's about these virtual ones, because are they just a fitness thing or is there a value to them? And I wanted to get our local priest on, because he did, during the lockdown, he did a virtual Camino,
Wow.
and he competed against the other priests. So it was who would get there first. So it was a sponsorship thing, and they were doing it like on a treadmill at church or wherever. I don't know.
No, I think people are finding maybe those connections with one another, which the internet allows us to
Mhm.
have, so that they are building a sense of camaraderie and friendship and connectedness as they are doing this.
Yeah,
Anyway, something to look into for a
yeah.
future episode, Matt.
Okay. So we don't have a question today, but what
No.
I thought it might be worth doing is to reflect on the whole series. If there were any favorite moments for you, anything that, and particularly, I guess this is more for you, Mary Michelle. Like,
Oh
is
gosh,
there anything
you're
you've
putting me on
learned?
the spot,
Well,
Matt. Okay.
have your perceptions been changed by doing
Well,
this?
I, that's a good question. I wouldn't say that. I don't know that my perception has changed. I think my knowledge has certainly increased. Thank you. Thanks to you. A high point for me, and maybe others will comment on this, is listening to you, Matt, tell stories. You are a consummate storyteller, Matt. It's such a pleasure to have met you and to have listened to your stories. It's been marvelous to meet someone like you who's so beautifully describes things, and that's really been a high point for me, is listening to your experience, because of course I don't have any. And
Well,
that was the whole point. That's what we said at the outset. And we loved this idea of having an
yeah.
experienced
Well,
Pellegrino
can I say something? I'm looking up
and a
because
beginner.
I wonder if it's on my shelf and I can't see it, but there is a book that I read a few years ago, and it's called The Seven Basic Plots: Why Human Beings Tell Stories, by a guy called Christopher Booker. And it talks about basically how all the stories in the world have similar plots and they all have the same characters, but how human
Yeah.
beings, we learn through stories. And
Well, we
it's
have the
so true.
archetypes, right? That
Yeah,
Campbell and Jung
but
identified.
it's like, if you give us statistics, like if you give us statistics, we don't remember them. So, for example, I mean, politicians use it a lot. If they throw statistics at us, we don't listen to them. But if they say this story, oh well, I was out in my constituency today and I met this woman and she's struggling to get a doctor's appointment, and then we remember that, and because we relate to stories. So I think storytelling is so important. I think
Of
it's
course,
the
and
most human
it's as old
activity.
as the human race. I mean, it's as old as when people put their handprint in
Yeah.
clay and then put it on the wall. That was a
Mhm.
story. I am here. I was here. So
Yeah,
whatever the
and
purpose was, we don't know.
interestingly, I mean, if you look at obviously, pilgrimages go across all religions, and we've touched on that. But most people, I think, that are coming into here are from a Christian heritage, if not practicing Christians. If
Okay.
you look at some of the most powerful stories in the Bible, like the prodigal son, like the Good Samaritan, they didn't actually happen. I mean, Jesus never said that happened, but
No,
he told stories to illustrate points.
of course, of course.
And that's important. Like, the story doesn't have to be factually true, it has to be spiritually true.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
I always think, like, people always think about the Good Samaritan is probably the most famous, but there were loads of others. Never happened.
That's a very good comment, Matt, because that makes me think this is why people don't particularly question the legend or the myth of St. James,
Yeah.
of the way,
Mhm.
of Compostela. Like, that
Yeah.
story is shrouded in mystery
Yeah.
and legend, and who knows if it's even true or if it's been
Well,
embellished. But it actually doesn't matter,
no, it
because look,
doesn't.
you've
It
got
doesn't.
500,000 people on the Camino estimated this year.
Yeah.
500,000.
But
You
there's
know that.
already a quarter of a million have already got to Santiago this year.
Yes,
The
exactly.
record.
And we have another half year to
Yeah,
go.
we're only in July now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So everybody, no one cares.
Yeah, well, and
It's
it's
true
true,
or not?
because when I first started walking it, it was like, this is a bit of a dodgy backstory. But I
Right?
mean, there's another tomb of Saint James in Jerusalem in the Armenian
Of
cathedral.
course
I've
there
been
is.
there, so I can always say, well, I know I've seen Saint James because it's one or the other.
Yeah,
But it doesn't matter. It
it
doesn't
doesn't.
matter, and I
Which is
think that,
interesting because we build the story as well by
yeah,
our presence, by
yeah,
listening. It's a two-way street. You're the storyteller, but you're not shouting into an empty space. You're talking to people who are receiving
yeah.
it, and it becomes, that's what makes it into a living thing,
Well,
and
I think
something
you're
that can
right,
be passed on to the next person, which is
and
how we've always communicated.
I think you're right. I've got a couple of examples. I mean, like, because of the pilgrims that were walking through Spain, there was a guy called Domingo, and he wanted to become like a monk or something, and they said, "Oh, you're too poor, you're too uneducated." So he just stopped by the way and helped build a bridge and helped look after pilgrims. And this settlement grew up around him, and he became a saint. And it's now Santo Domingo de la Calzada, Saint Domingo of the Way. And then there's also further down the road, there's a San Juan who was his disciple. And these stories build on each other. And in the Santo Domingo Cathedral, there's
Very much
these
so.
roosters, and that's because there was a story about some pilgrims that went through. And well, I won't give the story away, but it's a very nice pilgrim story. And even onto the modern day, how many people were inspired to walk the Camino, either through the Paulo Coelho book or the Shirley MacLaine book. I mean, how much of either of those is literally true? I mean, Shirley MacLaine's was on another level. But also The Way, the film, and the film The Way.
Which
Um,
is lovely.
yeah, it's a lovely film. It's not true. I mean, it's a
No,
fictional film.
it's a story, and I love it. I love it, Matt, because it is to me, one of the most ultimately beautifully
Yes,
crafted stories.
yeah,
I love the craft. It's like a play. You've got
yeah.
the archetypal characters, you've got the
Mm.
father, the son, the loss of the son. Like, it's just completely fascinating.
I I learned something about that film this week. I don't know how true it is, but I thought, because we talk about stories building on stories, and apparently it's inspired by Wizard of Oz. because the miserable dentist, I forget his name, he's like an aging male Dorothy. But then one of them's the Tin Man, one of them's the Lion,
Right,
one of
right,
them,
right. Well,
I
that
think the
makes
Dutch
sense.
guy is the Lion, and they think the girl who's smoking all the time's the Tin Man. And it's like, you know, and I can see that. I can see that. But
Yeah,
that's brilliant. What
it's
genius.
a very well crafted story. I've always loved it for that.
Hmm. So, okay, so the storytelling you got out of it,
Yes,
anything else?
absolutely. And of course, I've learned many things, Matt. Okay, don't take anything. No, I'm just joking. Don't plan. Don't book ahead. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, but I think
Uh,
I think the point is don't overthink. Don't overthink. Don't
don't
put
overthink.
barriers up
Yeah,
that
I
will
was
stop you.
joking.
Yeah,
But it's been completely fascinating, Matt. And on my side of things, I truly don't want it to end. So I really hope that we're going to get a few votes to keep this go, pick this back up in
yeah,
the fall, so that we can have some more stories and continue the journey.
definitely. And thank you so much. And
Oh, I got
oh,
one thing I want to add before we go. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, my final thing that I wanted to add, which is also I want to thank Yale and I think it was
Yes,
Omar from who did the bonus episode,
yes,
and I
definitely.
wish them every. If you haven't seen the bonus episode, check it out because they are creating a Camino from the port of Jaffa or Yaffo to Jerusalem. I mean, that will be amazing when that's properly up and running, and I can't wait to do that one. To actually do the pilgrimage to walk into Jerusalem. I think that was so incredible, and we're in exciting
Wow.
time. We're in exciting,
Wow.
but yeah,
That's going to be amazing to follow that story as it unfolds, Matt.
yeah,
So hopefully you'll keep us posted about that. So here's what I just thought I was going to add earlier when we were talking about the myth and the legend
hmm
of the Camino. Because there's actually farther back than medieval times when it was in its heyday, its first heyday. Um, it's certainly enjoying a new heyday. Even before that, when they discovered the body,
hmm
supposedly. So around 800 AD or somewhere in there. And then by 1000 AD, they started building the cathedral. So whoever was the bishop at the time who found out about the body and these remains that are attributed to be of St. James, there's a slightly more sinister and more political side to it, which you will know, which is that part of the world, the Iberian Peninsula, was
hmm
Moorish, was
yeah,
under the control of the Moors at that time, and there were many fights back and forth. And so the fact that there was going to be a pilgrimage across northern Spain meant that then a Christian pilgrimage then meant that the pilgrims had to be protected. Well, who was going to protect them? Well, soldiers,
hmm
naturally. So that started to bring more people, more Christians who were then settling in the area,
yeah,
and tradespeople, because of course they needed goods and services, and also a military to protect all of this evolving settlement,
hmm
meant that it was a way to kind of create a stronghold, Christian stronghold, and this was in Galicia, obviously in the north. Apparently, the first Camino was actually the Camino Norte,
yeah,
was the one that they used across the north,
yeah,
and then Camino Frances came
yeah,
later on. But I
yeah,
found out something else interesting, Matt, which is that they think that likely this pilgrimage preceded Christianity and is as old as pagan times
yeah,
because of Fistera,
yeah,
the end of the earth,
yeah,
where when the sun sets, apparently there was
mm
an altar to the sun. This is
hmm
in pagan times, and offerings were made. And it was thought that at that point in time, when the sun sets, the veil is thinner
yeah.
between our world and the
And the
other world.
next, and the pagans did believe in, well, still
So
do
I'm
believe in
I'm
places. Yeah.
saying that to connect the whole story together,
hmm
because we've established this is how we learn things, this is how we communicate. So we tell stories over
hmm
generations, over centuries, over millennia in some cases.
hmm
So it's just very interesting. This isn't just a Christian invention,
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing with the malls is true, and you're right. The Primitiva and Del Norte came first because they were reconquering the
Exactly.
peninsula. And actually, I do remember when I was walking across the Meseta, we stopped in a hamlet, and it was called Villamoros, the town of the malls.
Right.
So
Yeah, so
they
just
were
tell
obviously in
people
that
what
mix.
the meseta is. It's
Yeah,
the table in the middle that's
yeah.
dry
So
and hot.
yeah, and of course there was also a big Jewish presence there as well that didn't end nicely, and that's not one of Christianity's greatest episodes either.
No, no,
But
there aren't
yeah,
many of
but
them.
which is why I think it's quite inspirational that you have people like Omar that are walking it. A lot of people from the Jewish community do walk it, and I think that's really
That's
something.
significant,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
And I do know of a Sufi Muslim that walked it. Most mainstream Muslims wouldn't do it, but I know a Sufi guy that did.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I think that's great.
Well, there's so much more to still explore with you, Matt.
And maybe next time we will. So let's aim for September. But what I will say, we're going to sign off now because we've whittled on away way too far as we always do. But it's
Sorry about that.
pleasant. Is anybody's got any ideas for future
Yes.
episodes?
The next
Put them
series
in
of
the chat.
questions.
Put them in the chat, and we'll consider them.
Okay. Matt, I wish you the best holiday, the best trip,
Thank
the
you.
best return to one of your favorite places. And I can't wait to hear about it. And happy trails.
Yeah. Well, my favorite places are always on the path. So stay on the path. Bye.
Bye for now.